I used to believe that good people got what they earned, and chaos followed only those who invited it. That delusion shattered when I stepped outside to find my garage in splinters and my ex-wife laughing beside my truck. My name is Lloyd Langdon, and I'm 34 years old. Each morning starts with coffee at 5:30, blueprints by 6, and a truck that was supposed to last another decade. Kayla Brooks, my ex-wife, had other plans. After our divorce, I thought I'd seen the last of her storms. I was wrong. Drew Mathers, her new boyfriend with endless excuses and empty promises, stood in my driveway that night too, urging her to finish what she started. My fists clenched, but I reached for my phone instead. The revenge they deserved wouldn't come from violence. It would come from evidence, patience, and the full weight of consequences. Before I go any further, let me know in the comments where in the world you are watching from. And make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow I will share a story you don't want to miss. But let me start from the beginning. The coffee maker gurgled its last breath as I settled onto my couch. 7:30 on a Thursday night. And finally, the day was winding down. My shoulders ached from hauling lumber at the Wilson job site. Good, honest work that paid the bills and kept my mind straight. I'd been at it since sunrise, and now my living room felt like a sanctuary of quiet. I poured the coffee into my favorite mug, the one with the chipped handle my dad had given me when I first started contracting. The warmth seeped through the ceramic and into my calloused hands. Outside my window, streetlights blinked on against the deepening twilight. Just another evening in a string of predictable ones I'd built since the divorce. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. 3 missed calls from Kayla. I frowned, setting it face down. Whatever drama she was spinning tonight could wait until morning. We'd been divorced for 18 months, and still, she couldn't seem to let go of whatever grievances kept her tethered to me. I'd stopped answering her late-night calls months ago when I realized they only led to accusations or drunken reminiscing. Instead, I spread out invoices and receipts across the table. Tax season was coming, and unlike Kayla, paperwork had rules you could follow. The methodical sorting calmed me. Materials in one stack, labor in another, mileage tracked in neat columns. The world made sense when broken down into numbers that added up. The distant rumble of an engine cut through my concentration. Not unusual for the neighborhood, but something in the sound, a high, aggressive rev, made the hair on my neck stand up. I recognized that particular growl. I'd tuned that engine myself. My truck. The noise grew louder, closer, angrier, like it was charging straight toward my house. I was halfway to the front door when the crash hit. A sound like thunder, then splintering wood and shattering glass. The house actually shuddered. Coffee spilled across my papers as I bolted outside, bare feet scraping against the concrete path. Dust billowed from what used to be my garage door. Where organized tools and workbenches had stood, I saw only fractured beams and twisted metal. And there, wedged halfway through the structure, was my Ford F-250. Headlights still blazing, engine still running. The truck I'd spent years maintaining. The vehicle that carried my livelihood. Jesus Christ, I whispered, coughing through the cloud of drywall dust. The driver's side door creaked open. Kayla stumbled out, gripping the frame for balance. Her blonde hair hung in her face, and even from the yard, I could smell the alcohol. "Look what you made me do, Lloyd," she shouted, waving her arms wildly at the destruction. "Are you happy now?" Something cold settled in my chest. "What I made you do? That's my truck, my garage." She laughed, a brittle sound that carried down the quiet street. "You wouldn't answer your phone. You never listen unless I make you listen." I stepped closer, careful to keep my voice level despite the rage building inside me. "Get away from the truck, Kayla. How did you even get the keys?" "I made a copy." She tossed her head defiantly. "For emergencies." Mrs. Nolan from across the street, appeared at her fence, tablet in hand. Other neighbors were emerging onto their porches, drawn by the commotion. I felt their eyes on us. Another chapter in the Langdon drama they'd been watching since Kayla and I moved in as newlyweds years ago. "This is what happens," Kayla continued, swaying slightly, "when you pretend I don't exist. You forced me to this, Lloyd. You always make me the bad guy. You stole my truck and drove it into my garage," I said, incredulous. "There's no making you anything. You did this." She tried to push past me toward the house. I blocked her path, my bare feet stinging from the debris scattered across the driveway. "Wait for the cops, Kayla. Insurance will cover it," she slurred, waving dismissively at the wreckage. "Or you'll split it with me. You owe me that much." Sirens wailed in the distance. I stood my ground, trying to process the sight before me. My garage in ruins, my ex-wife reeking of whiskey, my life once again dragged into her chaos. Officer Harper's cruiser pulled up minutes later, casting alternating red and blue shadows across what remained of my garage door. He'd responded to calls at our house before, back when we were still married, and Kayla's temper turned our fights loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "Mr. Langdon," he nodded, taking in the scene with practiced calm. "Ms. Brooks, want to tell me what happened here?" "He provoked me," Kayla started immediately. "He's been threatening me and—" "She stole my truck," I cut in. "I was inside when she drove it straight into the garage. I didn't even know she had a key." Harper separated us, walking Kayla to his cruiser while I stood in my driveway, watching the lights flash against what remained of my property. When he returned, his expression had turned grim. "She's claiming you gave her permission to use the truck," he said. "Says you two had an arrangement." "That's a lie. I haven't spoken to her in weeks." Harper sighed, flipping open his notepad. "You might want to call your insurance company first thing tomorrow. Just so you know, if they determine this was intentional damage, they might not cover it." I stared at the officer, then back at my demolished garage. The magnitude of what had just happened, what might still be coming, settled over me like a weight. Morning light streamed through my kitchen window, casting long shadows across the floor. I'd barely slept, spending most of the night pacing, calling emergency services for a structural assessment, and fighting the urge to drive to Kayla's apartment and demand answers. My coffee tasted bitter as I stood at the sink, staring at what daylight had revealed. The destruction looked even worse now. My garage door hung at an awkward angle, splintered wood and twisted metal creating a jagged mouth where a proper entrance used to be. The truck had been towed away around 2 a.m., leaving a gaping hole and tire tracks pressed into my concrete driveway. I pulled on my work boots and stepped outside. The crisp morning air carried the acrid smell of burnt rubber and gasoline. Shattered glass crunched beneath my feet as I approached what remained of my workspace. Inside, it was a total loss. The impact had crushed my workbench, scattering tools I'd collected over 15 years. A toolbox lay upended in the corner, wrenches and screwdrivers mixed with debris. The shelving units had collapsed, spilling paint cans and storage bins across the concrete floor. The back wall showed cracks running from floor to ceiling. "Remember when we built those shelves?" I muttered to myself, picking up a broken level. We'd spent a weekend getting everything just right. Kayla handing me screws, me making sure each shelf sat perfectly horizontal. Before the drinking got worse. Before the accusations and the screaming matches. Before divorce became the only solution. A silver sedan pulled into my driveway around 9. A tall, thin man in a gray suit emerged, clutching a leather portfolio. "Mr. Langdon?" "Ronald Beck, from Mid-State Insurance." He extended his hand, grimacing slightly at the destruction behind me. "I understand you've had an incident." "That's one word for it," I replied, shaking his hand. Beck walked the perimeter, taking photographs and making notes. He measured the hole in the wall, examined the foundation, and collected samples of the tire marks. His expression remained professionally neutral, but I caught the slight furrow in his brow when he stepped back to survey the whole scene. Your policy is comprehensive, he said finally, scrolling through his tablet. But there's an excluded driver endorsement. He turned the screen toward me, showing a document with Kayla's name highlighted. Ex-spouse, correct? Yes. We've been divorced for 14 months. Beck nodded slowly. And she was driving the vehicle at the time of impact? She stole it, I clarified. I wasn't even aware she had a key. I see. He made another note. Mr. Langdon, I need to be straight with you. The company may deny this claim based on the excluded driver clause and possible intentional acts exclusion. If your ex-wife deliberately caused this damage— She did, I interrupted. She admitted it. There were witnesses. That's helpful, but complicates things from an insurance perspective. Beck closed his portfolio. We'll conduct our investigation in parallel with any legal proceedings. If the courts determine she acted without permission and with malicious intent, that will influence our final determination. My phone buzzed. Jerry's name flashed on the screen. I appreciate your time, I told Beck, who handed me his card before departing. 20 minutes later, Jerry's truck pulled up. He whistled low when he saw the damage. Man, she really did a number on your place. He clapped me on the shoulder. I brought plywood. Let's get this secured before someone gets hurt. We spent the next few hours boarding up the gaping hole where my garage door had been. Jerry worked silently for a while, then said, You know she's going to try something else, right? What makes you say that? Because people like Kayla don't stop. They escalate. He hammered a nail with more force than necessary. You file charges? Officer Harper's handling it. She's claiming I gave her permission to use the truck. Jerry snorted. And the part where she drove it through your garage? That with permission too? My phone buzzed with a text. Kayla, you'll regret pressing charges. You know I can make things difficult. I showed Jerry the message. He shook his head. Document everything, he advised. Every call, every text. This isn't over. After Jerry left, I sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad. I took screenshots of Kayla's text, printed phone logs showing her missed calls from the night before, and organized the photos I'd taken of the damage. A call from Officer Harper interrupted my cataloging. Mr. Langdon? Just following up on last night. Ms. Brooks is claiming you had a standing arrangement about the truck. Says you lent it to her regularly. That's absolutely false, I replied, feeling my jaw tighten. We haven't had any arrangement since the divorce. After hanging up, I walked to my front door where the Ring camera was mounted. I hadn't checked the footage yet, still processing the physical damage. I downloaded the app on my phone and scrolled back to yesterday evening. There she was. 9:42 p.m. Kayla approached my driveway, glancing furtively over her shoulder. She produced a key I never gave her, and unlocked my truck. The camera caught her sliding into the driver's seat, starting the engine. I paused the footage, staring at her face illuminated by the dome light. Her expression wasn't desperate or confused. It was determined, calculated. I took a deep breath, saved the clip, and whispered, If she wants a war, she'll get one. I parked outside Aaron Daly's office building, a modest two-story brick structure that housed a handful of local businesses. The sign in the window read, Daily Legal Services, in simple black lettering. No flashy promises, no dramatic eagle symbols, just a name and a profession. That's exactly what I needed. My manila folder felt too thin for the weight of what had happened. Inside, I had everything. Printed screenshots of Kayla's texts, the Ring camera footage on a USB drive, insurance documents with the excluded driver clause highlighted, and photos of the wreckage. Evidence that seemed so clear to me, but would it be enough? The reception area was clean and quiet, with dark blue chairs and framed diplomas on the wall. A middle-aged woman looked up from her computer. Mr. Langdon? Ms. Daly will see you now. Aaron Daly stood as I entered her office. Early 40s, brown hair pulled back neatly. Minimal jewelry, She had the composed look of someone who didn't waste energy on unnecessary movements. "Mr. Langdon," she extended her hand. "Please, have a seat and tell me what's happening." I laid out the folder contents on her desk. My ex-wife stole my truck and drove it into my garage 2 nights ago. Erin didn't flinch. She reviewed each document methodically, asking clarifying questions while taking notes. When I played the Ring camera footage, she leaned forward slightly, the only indication that something had caught her interest. "How long have you been divorced?" she asked. 14 months. I shifted in my seat. The separation was difficult. Kayla doesn't handle rejection well. And since the divorce, any contact? Occasional texts, usually when she's angry about something. She'll call late at night sometimes, but I stopped answering months ago. Erin nodded. "Tell me about her behavior patterns. Has she demonstrated this type of destructive action before?" I thought back to the broken dishes, the screaming matches, the time she'd poured beer on my work laptop after an argument. She's always had a temper. Things would escalate quickly when she felt cornered or ignored. I paused. But driving a truck through my garage? That's new. Any idea what triggered this specific incident? I shook my head. She left me 3 voicemails that night. I didn't listen to them until after the crash. Just the usual accusations, that I abandoned her, that I never cared. Is there anyone who might have encouraged this behavior? Her boyfriend, Drew. My jaw tightened involuntarily. He's got a record. Property damage. Fighting. Jerry, my friend, says Drew's been egging her on, telling her I got away with too much in the divorce. Erin made another note. "Here's what we need to do. First, establish theft. She took your property without permission. Second, prove intent to damage. The video helps, and the witnesses. Third, file for full restitution and possibly a restraining order. Will this hold up? Insurance is already hesitating because of the excluded driver clause." "That's actually helpful for us," Erin replied. "It establishes that she was explicitly prohibited from driving your vehicle, strengthening the theft argument." I felt the first glimmer of hope since the crash. So, what's next? I'll draft the complaint today. We'll need statements from your neighbors who witnessed the event, and I want to check if there's security footage from nearby houses that might show her approach. Erin handed me her card with her cell number written on the back. "If she contacts you again, in any way, document everything and call me immediately." That afternoon, Jerry helped me install a temporary door on the garage. The plywood looked ugly against the brick, a visual reminder of the chaos Kayla had brought back into my life. "Heard Drew was driving by yesterday," Jerry said, holding the panel steady while I drilled. "Mrs. Nolan across the street mentioned it. Said he slowed down, checking out the damage." "Great." I wiped sweat from my forehead. "Just what I need." "You got cameras?" Jerry asked. "Just the doorbell one." "Might want to add more. Cover all angles." He handed me another screw. "People like Drew, they get brave when they think no one's watching." I remembered the glint in Kayla's eyes that night, the strange satisfaction as she stood by my wrecked truck. "I'll order some today." The screech of tires made us both turn. A sedan parked across the street, and Kayla emerged, slamming the door. "Really, Lloyd?" she shouted, gesturing wildly. "Lawyers? After everything we've been through?" I pulled out my phone and started recording. Jerry positioned himself slightly in front of me, hammer still in hand. "You ruined my life," Kayla continued, staying on the other side of the street. "You think some fancy attorney is going to fix what you did?" I said nothing, just kept recording. This only infuriated her more. "You're pathetic. You know that? Hiding behind your camera." She kicked a rock toward my yard. "This isn't over." After she drove away, Jerry shook his head. "You did good not engaging." "Got it all on video," I replied, sending the clip to Erin immediately. My phone rang early the next morning. Sunlight was just beginning to filter through my bedroom blinds as I answered. "Lloyd? It's Erin Daly." "I found something interesting." Her voice had that controlled excitement lawyers get when they discover crucial evidence. I had my assistant check with locksmiths in the area. 2 days before the incident, someone matching Kayla's description paid cash for a duplicate key at Ace Hardware. She used her ID. There's a receipt with her name on it. I sat up straight, fully awake now. 2 days before? Yes. The locksmith remembers her clearly. Said she claimed she was locked out of her husband's truck and needed a spare. The phone nearly slipped from my hand as realization washed over me. "Premeditated," I whispered, watching the morning light illuminate the screen. She planned it. The morning sky glowed pearl gray as I pulled into the parking lot of Aaron's law firm. 7 days since Kayla had crashed into my garage, and finally we were putting legal wheels in motion. I'd barely slept, but somehow felt more clear-headed than I had in months. Aaron greeted me at reception, coffee already in hand. "Ready to make this official?" "Been ready since she drove through my garage," I replied, following her down the hallway. Her office smelled of lemon polish and fresh paper. Files were stacked neatly on her desk. Organized chaos, she called it. I took the chair across from her while she spread out documents with yellow tabs marking signature lines. The complaint outlines everything: property damage, theft of the vehicle, intentional destruction, emotional distress, and lost income while your business was disrupted. She slid the papers toward me. "I've attached the locksmith's affidavit, the neighbor's statements, and stills from your security footage. The timeline is airtight." I scanned the pages, impressed by how clinical it all looked. My life's chaos reduced to numbered paragraphs and legal terms. "Will this actually work?" I asked, pen hovering over the first signature line. "It's solid," Aaron said. "The premeditation angle changes everything. She didn't just crash in a rage. She planned to take your truck days in advance. That's deliberate malice." I signed my name. Each stroke of the pen felt like reclaiming a piece of ground. "Once we file today, she'll be served within 48 hours. Expect things to get worse before they get better," Aaron warned. "People like Kayla and Drew often escalate when confronted with consequences." "I'm ready," I said, though my stomach tightened at the thought. That night, my phone buzzed with notifications. Drew had posted a rant on social media, tagging mutual friends. "Your buddy Lloyd thinks he's tough with his lawyer games. Some men can't handle real women. Careful who you push. Karma's got a mean right hook." I showed the screenshot to Jerry when he came by later. "Classic intimidation," he said, helping me unpack the new security cameras I'd ordered. "Don't respond. Just document." We worked methodically, installing cameras at each corner of the house and extra lighting around the driveway. The temporary garage door made me wince every time I looked at it, a visual reminder of violated boundaries. "You remember when we built that deck at my place?" Jerry asked, testing the angle on the final camera. "Took us all weekend, but we did it right." I nodded, grateful for the memory. The smell of fresh-cut lumber, cold beers at sunset, simple satisfaction of making something solid. Before Kayla, before the crash, when weekends meant building instead of rebuilding. "We'll fix this place up better than before," Jerry promised, clapping my shoulder. I was about to respond when headlights swept across the driveway. My heart rate spiked until I recognized Officer Harper's patrol car. "Evening, gentlemen," he said, approaching with that measured police walk. "Thought I'd check in, see how things are progressing." I explained about the civil filing and showed him Drew's post. Harper nodded soberly. "Document everything. If they cross the line from threats to actions, call us immediately. Don't engage directly." After he left, I walked Jerry to his truck. The night air felt heavy with impending rain. "Lock up tight," Jerry advised. "And remember, you're doing the right thing." The next morning, I discovered a long scratch across my replacement work truck's driver's door. Deliberate, deep enough to hit metal. My hands shook with anger as I photographed it from multiple angles, then sent the images to Aaron and Officer Harper. By afternoon, the insurance company had called. They'd scheduled a joint hearing with both parties present to determine fault and liability coverage. The claims adjuster says they'll likely defer to the court ruling, I told Erin over the phone. Perfect, she replied. We'll be fully prepared. The deposition took place 3 days later. Kayla arrived with a discount lawyer who looked barely out of law school. She dressed conservatively, hair pulled back, minimal makeup. The picture of innocence. When questioned, she dabbed at dry eyes with a tissue. It was an accident, she insisted. I was emotional because Lloyd had been threatening me. I almost jumped from my seat, but Erin's hand on my arm kept me grounded. And what exactly provoked this emotional response? Erin asked, her voice neutral. He's been controlling since our marriage. When I tried to talk to him that night, I just lost control of the vehicle. A perfect tear finally appeared. The insurance adjuster scribbled notes, expression unreadable. Erin smiled slightly. Let's review the evidence. She played the security footage on her tablet. The timestamp clearly showed Kayla approaching my truck using a key, then deliberately driving toward my garage. Most damning was the frame Erin froze. Kayla's expression just before impact. Not panic, not fear. A smile. The room went silent. Outside, after the deposition concluded, Kayla cornered me by the elevator. You're not winning this, she hissed, close enough that I could smell her perfume mixed with cigarettes. You think you're so clever with your cameras and your fancy lawyer. I stepped back, maintaining distance. I already did win, I replied evenly. The moment you didn't realize you were on camera. The moment you hit record on your own downfall. Her face contorted. But before she could respond, the elevator doors opened and Erin appeared beside me. That night, I sat alone in my kitchen as thunder rolled across the sky. Rain began to fall, pattering against the taped-up garage window. Each droplet traced a path down the plastic sheeting, distorting the view outside. Like tears, I thought, but not mine. 3 days after the deposition, my phone buzzed with a call from Erin. Lloyd, check your email. Now. Her voice had that calm intensity lawyers get when they've caught something important. I balanced my coffee mug on a stack of estimates for the garage repairs and opened my laptop. The email from Erin was already at the top of my inbox with the subject line, Urgent, Response to Discovery. I'm looking, I told her, clicking to download the attachment. Kayla's attorney just sent this over. Claims it's their smoking gun. The attachment opened to reveal a text message screenshot. My stomach dropped as I read it. Kayla, can I borrow the truck tonight? Me. Sure. Keys are in the usual spot. Just be careful. The timestamp showed 7:14 p.m., a few hours before the crash. I never sent this, I said, my voice flat with disbelief. Never. I know, Erin replied. Look at the font on your supposed reply. It's slightly different from the standard messaging app. And the blue bubble color is a shade off. I hadn't noticed those details, but now they seemed obvious. She faked this. Yes, but we need to prove it. I heard keyboard clicks on Erin's end. I've already subpoenaed your actual phone records from the carrier. The timestamps will show there was no such exchange. I remembered those hours before the crash, working late, then driving home with the radio turned up to drown out my thoughts. No texts to Kayla? No contact at all. What about the metadata? I asked, remembering a case I'd heard about where photo timestamps had been key evidence. Smart thinking. I'm sending this to my digital forensics contact right now. If she used one of those text spoofing apps, the metadata will show when the image was actually created. I couldn't help but laugh. A short, harsh sound. She really thinks this will work? People who lie think everyone else is as sloppy as they are, Erin said. Give me 24 hours on this. After hanging up, I stared at the fake screenshot, anger hardening into something colder, more focused. This wasn't just about the crash anymore. This was about truth. The next morning, Erin's forensics guy delivered. The metadata showed the screenshot had been created using a message simulator app, and the creation date was 2 days after the crash. Aaron sent me the full technical report with yellow highlights on the damning section. I printed everything: the fake screenshot, the metadata analysis, my actual phone records showing no such exchange. Each page felt like another brick in the wall I was building between Kayla's lies and my life. That evening, as I organized the evidence in a folder, I heard an engine revving outside. The sound rose and fell, taunting. I walked to the window and saw Drew's car crawling past my house, stereo blasting. I didn't react, just watched as he drove by a second time, slower now. He was looking for a reaction, something he could twist into a confrontation. Instead, I took a video with my phone and saved it with the growing pile of evidence. When Jerry came by with takeout an hour later, I showed him the footage. "That's intimidation," he said, frowning. "You should file for a protective order." I shook my head. "Not yet. Documenting everything first." "Lloyd," Jerry set down his fork, "sometimes the smart move is to get ahead of things. What if next time he doesn't just drive by?" The question hung there, reasonable and concerning. I called Erin. "Your friend is right," she said after I explained. "A protective order creates an official record of their pattern of behavior. If they violate it, there are immediate consequences." "File it," I decided. The courtroom felt smaller than I expected. I sat beside Erin at a polished wooden table, my evidence folder neatly arranged before me. The door swung open 15 minutes after our scheduled time, and Kayla walked in with her lawyer, moving like she owned the room. She wore a conservative dress that didn't match her smirk. The judge, an older woman with steel-rimmed glasses, noted the tardiness with a frown, but proceeded. When I presented the drive-by intimidation, Kayla's attorney countered with a stunning claim. "Your Honor, Mr. Langdon has installed surveillance equipment specifically targeting my client. This constitutes harassment." I started to object, but Erin touched my arm, then addressed the judge calmly. "The security cameras are on Mr. Langdon's private property and were installed after his garage was deliberately crashed into. This is standard security practice, not harassment." The judge reviewed both submissions, then looked over her glasses at us. "I'm ordering a 2-week cooling-off period. Both parties will attend mediation. No contact, direct or indirect. Ms. Brooks, stay away from Mr. Langdon's property. Mr. Langdon, your cameras remain on your property only. We'll reconvene after mediation." She struck her gavel with finality. Outside, walking to my truck under gray skies, I felt deflated. "That seemed like a draw at best," I muttered to Erin. She shook her head, a slight smile playing at her lips. "Not at all. She just gave us rope. Let her hang herself with it." The sun beat down as Jerry and I unloaded fresh lumber from his truck. 2 weeks after the court hearing, and life had settled into a strange rhythm, half normal, half surveillance operation. "Hand me that level," Jerry said, squinting at the garage frame we were rebuilding. I passed it over, watching him position it against the new siding. "Perfect," he muttered, making a pencil mark. "Crazy how much damage one hit can do." I nodded, thinking about more than just the garage. My dad used to say it takes years to build something and seconds to destroy it. Smart man. Jerry hammered a nail with 3 precise strikes. "Speaking of destroying things, heard anything from Hurricane Kayla lately?" "Radio silence since the hearing," I said. "But Erin says that's typical. People like Kayla go quiet when they're planning something." We worked through the afternoon, replacing damaged siding and reinforcing the frame. The physical labor felt good, like I was literally rebuilding what Kayla had tried to break. With each board we secured, the garage looked more like mine again. "Let's get this motion light up before we lose daylight," Jerry suggested, wiping sweat from his forehead. I held the ladder while he mounted the new security light, angling it to cover the driveway and part of the side yard. The old one had shattered in the crash, leaving that area dark at night. This one's got a wider range, Jerry explained, connecting the wires. Anything comes within 20 feet, it'll light up like the 4th of July. Good. I handed him the screwdriver. Between this and the cameras, we should catch anything that moves. As we packed up the tools, Mrs. Nolan waved from across the street. She'd been keeping an eye on my place since the crash, her curtains twitching whenever unfamiliar cars drove by. That woman would make a great security guard, Jerry chuckled. Doesn't miss a thing. She's testifying at the insurance hearing next week, I said. Erin says her video is our strongest evidence. That night, after Jerry left, I sat at my kitchen table updating my evidence log. Every call, text, drive-by, all documented with military precision. Each entry felt like another nail in Kayla's coffin. Around midnight, I was about to turn in when the new motion light flooded the driveway. I moved to the window, peering through the blinds. A shadow moved along the fence line. Too big to be a cat or raccoon. I grabbed my phone and hit record. The figure crept toward the garage, staying just at the edge of the light. It was Drew. I recognized his build and the baseball cap he always wore. He was examining the cameras, probably looking for blind spots. My heart pounded as I dialed 911, keeping my voice low. Someone's trespassing on my property. I have a restraining order against him. The dispatcher promised officers were on their way. I kept filming as Drew disappeared around the side of the garage. 10 minutes later, red and blue lights flashed in the street. Officer Harper was first out of the car. By then, Drew had vanished, but Harper found fresh shoe prints in the mud by the fence where he'd climbed over. Size 11, distinctive tread pattern, Harper noted, photographing the prints. Is this the boyfriend you mentioned? Yes, Drew Mathers. He drives a black Camaro, probably parked a block away. Harper nodded. We'll file a trespass report. This violates your restraining order. The next morning, I forwarded the night footage and Officer Harper's report to Erin. She called back within the hour. This is exactly what we needed, she said, sounding pleased. I've added it to both cases. The insurance hearing is set for next Wednesday. Mrs. Nolan will testify at 2. What about the trespassing? Already filed a motion to show pattern of harassment. This strengthens our case considerably. Later that afternoon, the insurance adjuster called. Ronald Beck sounded different, more businesslike, less sympathetic than before. Mr. Langdon, I've reviewed the preliminary evidence. Without clear proof that Ms. Brooks deliberately caused damage, we're leaning toward denying the claim under the excluded driver provision. My stomach tightened. She stole my truck and crashed it into my garage. I understand your position, but we need more than your word against hers. If the hearing produces concrete evidence of intentional damage, we'll reconsider. After hanging up, I called Erin. The insurance company's looking for a way out. They always do, she replied. But Mrs. Nolan's video shows Kayla accelerating just before impact. That proves intent. Don't worry, we're still on track. That night, I stood in my driveway, staring at the faint oil stain where my truck had been parked before Kayla stole it. The garage looked better with the new siding, but I could still see the ghost of the damage, the slightly different color of the fresh paint, the new hardware on the reinforced door. Under the motion light, I traced the tire marks that still faintly scarred the concrete. One more piece, I whispered. That's all we need. Court day dawned clear and cold. I stood before the bathroom mirror, adjusting my tie. My father's voice echoed in my head. Dress like you expect to win. I'd chosen my best suit, the one I wore to bid presentations. The dark blue fabric felt like armor. My phone buzzed. Erin. On my way. Bring all originals in the envelope. Coffee first? I texted back, agreeing to meet her at the cafe across from the courthouse. Sleep had come in fragments last night, my mind replaying evidence, rehearsing testimony. The morning stillness felt like the calm before a storm. As I locked the front door, Mrs. Nolan emerged from her house, dressed in a floral blazer, her silver hair neatly pinned. Ready for the big day? she called, waving a folder that presumably held her tablet and notes. As ready as I'll ever be, I answered, mustering a smile. Thank you again for doing this. That woman needs consequences, she said firmly. I've lived here 30 years. Never seen such deliberate destruction. The morning crowd at Courthouse Cafe buzzed with conversation. Erin was already seated at a corner table, documents spread before her. Good. You brought everything, she said, accepting the envelope. Her demeanor was calm, confident. Mrs. Nolan coming? She'll meet us there. How are you feeling about today? The evidence is solid. She sipped her coffee. The metadata report came back. Definitively proves Kayla's permission text was created after the crash. Just follow my lead and stay composed, no matter what she says. We arrived at the courtroom 30 minutes early. Mrs. Nolan was already waiting outside, reviewing her notes. More surprisingly, a small cluster of people with notepads stood nearby. Local reporters who'd caught wind of the case. Property damage stories don't usually draw attention, Erin murmured. Someone tipped them off. Drew or Kayla, I guessed. They probably think public pressure helps their side. At exactly 9:30, we filed into courtroom C. The insurance company's attorney nodded politely as we passed. I spotted Kayla and Drew in the last row, her hand clutched in his. She wore a conservative dress I'd never seen before, hair pulled back, makeup subtle. The performance had begun. When Judge Mercer called the case, Erin approached with practiced precision. She laid out our evidence chronologically. First, the locksmith receipt showing Kayla obtained a duplicate key 2 days before the incident, then the ring cam footage of her taking the truck, followed by the neighbor's video showing deliberate acceleration before impact. This was not an accident, Erin concluded. This was premeditated property destruction following vehicle theft. The insurance company's attorney echoed our position, highlighting the excluded driver clause and presenting the metadata report on the falsified permission text. When Mrs. Nolan took the stand, her testimony was devastating in its simplicity. I was reading by my front window when I heard an engine revving, she explained, voice steady. The truck came down the street much too fast. I started recording because I was concerned. The driver, Ms. Brooks, accelerated directly toward Mr. Langdon's garage. There was no attempt to brake. The courtroom remained silent as the judge reviewed Mrs. Nolan's video. Even on the small tablet screen, Kayla's intent was unmistakable. During cross-examination, Kayla's lawyer tried suggesting Mrs. Nolan harbored bias against his client. The elderly woman fixed him with a schoolteacher's stare. Young man, I've been a notary public for 40 years. I document what I see. Nothing more, nothing less. When Kayla took the stand, her transformation was immediate. She dabbed at invisible tears, voice trembling as she described feeling threatened by my controlling behavior. She claimed I had revoked permission to use the truck mid-drive, causing her emotional distress. The judge looked unconvinced. Ms. Brooks, the timestamp on your alleged permission text doesn't match carrier records. That's when Kayla's performance cracked. Her face flushed, voice rising. He deserved it. After everything he put me through, he deserved worse. The outburst hung in the air. Her lawyer winced visibly. Ms. Brooks, the judge said coldly, control yourself or I'll hold you in contempt. By closing arguments, Kayla's demeanor had shifted to stone-faced glaring. Drew fidgeted behind her, whispering something that made her shake her head sharply. Judge Mercer announced she would review all evidence overnight and deliver her ruling tomorrow morning. Court is adjourned until 9 a.m. Outside, the small group of reporters approached, but Erin smoothly deflected them. No comments until after the ruling. As we walked toward the parking lot, Erin looked cautiously optimistic. Her outburst couldn't have gone better for us if we'd scripted it. I was unlocking my truck when Kayla's voice sliced through the evening air. You think this is over? It's not over! She stood 20 yards away, Drew restraining her by the elbow as she pointed wildly in my direction. "This doesn't fix anything." Her voice echoed across the nearly empty lot, raw with fury and something else. Fear, maybe. For the first time since the crash, I felt nothing in response. No anger, no anxiety, just certainty that tomorrow would bring resolution. Morning sunlight filtered through the courthouse blinds, casting long lines across the polished floor. I'd barely slept, replaying yesterday's testimony in my head all night. My coffee tasted bitter as I sipped it outside the courtroom, waiting for Erin. "Ready?" she asked, approaching with her usual calm efficiency. Her briefcase looked heavier today, prepared for any last-minute arguments. "As I'll ever be," I replied, tossing the half-empty cup in a nearby trash can. The courtroom filled quickly. Mrs. Nolan nodded at me from the gallery. The insurance company's attorney arranged papers at his table. When Kayla and Drew entered, she looked nothing like yesterday's emotional mess. Today she wore a dark blazer, hair pulled severely back, playing the part of a responsible citizen. I kept my eyes forward. Judge Mercer entered promptly at 9 a.m. After the formalities, she adjusted her glasses and began reading from prepared notes. In the matter of Langdon v. Brooks, regarding the intentional destruction of property on April 17th, this court has carefully weighed all evidence and testimony presented. Her voice was measured, but there was an undercurrent of disapproval. First, regarding the truck. The evidence clearly establishes that Ms. Brooks obtained a duplicate key without permission, then took possession of the vehicle without consent. This constitutes theft under state law. I felt a small wave of vindication wash through me. Beside me, Erin remained perfectly still, focused. Second, regarding the damage, the video evidence from both Mr. Langdon's security camera and Mrs. Nolan's recording device shows beyond reasonable doubt that Ms. Brooks deliberately accelerated into the plaintiff's garage. There is no evidence supporting the claim this was accidental. Kayla shifted in her seat. Drew placed his hand on her arm. Third, regarding the falsified evidence. This court takes an extremely dim view of the text message purportedly giving permission to use the vehicle. Metadata analysis confirms this message was created after the incident occurred. This constitutes attempted fraud upon the court. The judge paused, looking directly at Kayla. Based on these findings, the court orders the following. Ms. Brooks is liable for the full replacement value of the 2019 Ford F-250 work truck, totaling $42,250. She is additionally liable for complete garage restoration costs of $16,225 and documented lost income of $9,400 during repairs. The total hit me like a physical force. Nearly $70,000. Kayla's face had drained of all color. Given Ms. Brooks's current financial situation and the substantial sum involved, the court approves wage garnishment not to exceed 25% of disposable earnings until the debt is satisfied. A lien is hereby placed on all bank accounts and future tax refunds. Judge Mercer wasn't finished. Due to the reckless endangerment involved in this incident, the court is referring this case to the Department of Motor Vehicles with a recommendation for a 6-month license suspension pending a financial responsibility hearing. Drew whispered something urgent to Kayla's attorney, who shook his head. Finally, for submitting falsified evidence, this court finds Ms. Brooks in contempt. She is fined $1,000 payable within 30 days. The judge closed her folder. This matter is resolved. Court is adjourned. The gavel struck with finality. People began rising, voices murmuring throughout the room. Erin turned to me, extending her hand. "Justice served, Mr. Langdon." I shook it firmly. "Thank you for everything. Document everything going forward," she advised. "If she misses payments or causes further trouble, we'll be back." As we gathered our things, I caught Kayla staring at me, her expression unreadable. The mask of composure had cracked, revealing something raw underneath. She brushed past her attorney and approached me in the aisle. "Can we talk?" Her voice was low. Urgent. Just for a minute? Aaron tensed beside me, but I nodded slightly. We moved to a quiet corner near the courtroom doors. Can we settle this? Kayla whispered, desperation edging into her tone. Something manageable? I can't. This will ruin me. I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time since the crash. The woman who had once shared my life, who had driven a truck through my garage out of spite, now trembled before me. No, I said evenly. Pay what you owe. Her face hardened instantly. You'll regret this. I swear to God, you'll regret this. I already regret plenty, I replied. But making you face consequences isn't one of them. She stormed off, Drew trailing behind her like a shadow. Outside, reporters waited, but Aaron steered me toward the parking lot. No comment works just fine today. Let the judgment speak for itself. The drive home felt surreal. I left the radio off, windows down, breathing air that somehow felt cleaner than it had in months. Traffic moved around me, people going about their ordinary lives, lives without court dates and property damage, and ex-spouses who turned vehicles into weapons. As dusk settled across the neighborhoods, I drove past houses with intact garages and unbroken windows, past families who had never had to calculate the cost of rage. The quiet in my truck wasn't empty anymore. It was peaceful, settled, mine again. Morning light filtered through the trees as Jerry and I positioned the final panel of siding on the garage. The spring air carried the scent of fresh lumber and possibility. 3 months had passed since the court verdict, and piece by piece, my life was reassembling into something solid. Ready for the last stretch? Jerry asked, lining up the nail gun. I steadied the panel, feeling its weight against my palms. Been ready for a while. Jerry fired the nail gun with practiced precision. Each metallic thunk felt like punctuation at the end of a long, exhausting sentence. I'd learned to appreciate these small, definitive sounds, the opposite of screeching tires and splintering wood. Remember when we stood here looking at the hole she left? Jerry asked, moving to the next section. Thought you might lose your mind that day. Came close, I admitted. The check from the court had finally cleared last week. The garnishment from Kayla's paychecks, plus the lien on her bank account, had accumulated enough to cover the final bills. Every invoice was now stamped paid in satisfying red letters. Heard anything from her? Jerry positioned the last nail. I shook my head. Not since her license renewal hearing. DMV extended the suspension another 3 months when she couldn't provide financial responsibility proof. And the boyfriend? Drew skipped town after his probation for the trespassing charge. Had some outstanding warrants in the next county, apparently. The final nail went in, and we stepped back to admire our work. The garage looked better than before. Stronger reinforcement, better insulation, a small window added for natural light. Inside, I'd reorganized my tools on pegboards, each one outlined in marker, so I'd know exactly where everything belonged. You know what this calls for, Jerry said, reaching into his cooler. He pulled out 2 bottles of cold beer. To walls that stand, and people who learn not to drive through them. We clinked bottles just as my phone buzzed. Aaron Daly's name appeared on the screen. Mr. Langdon. Her voice was clear and professional as always. I wanted to let you know personally that the last payment has cleared. I've just emailed you the final statement and closure letter. The insurer has also formally closed their investigation with a final denial since the judgment satisfied your losses. Thank you, Aaron, for everything. It's been a pleasure watching justice work as it should, she replied. Not something I get to see every day. After we hung up, Jerry helped me sweep up the last of the construction debris. We were loading it into his truck when Mrs. Nolan appeared at the edge of the driveway, carrying a covered plate. I thought you boys might appreciate something sweet, she said, lifting the foil to reveal chocolate chip cookies. The garage looks wonderful, Lloyd. Couldn't have done it without your help, Miss Nolan, I said, taking the plate. Your testimony made all the difference. She patted my arm gently. Peace looks good on you, dear. Much better than all that worry you were wearing before. When Jerry left and the day quieted, I organized the last of my tools, running my hands over each one. Some were replacements, others survivors from before. My phone rang once more as evening approached. Kayla's number. I answered, but said nothing. Lloyd. Her voice sounded different, smaller somehow. I wanted to ask, is there any way you might consider reducing the garnishment? It's hard right now. I felt a strange calm wash over me. Case number 47, CV 2022-85792, I read from memory. Final judgment. Payment in process. Have a good evening, Kayla. I hung up before she could respond. As sunset painted the sky in shades of amber and gold, I stepped outside and stood before the garage. The new paint glowed warm in the fading light. Where destruction had once gaped open, something solid now stood. I thought about what Mrs. Nolan had said about peace. She was right. There was a quietness in me now that felt earned, not empty. Like the difference between silence and stillness. Justice, it turned out, wasn't loud or dramatic. It wasn't about revenge or making someone hurt the way you hurt. It was steady, like the hum of a repaired engine or the solid thunk of a nail finding its place. If you're ever standing in the wreckage of something someone else destroyed, remember this. You don't rebuild for them. You don't even rebuild to prove a point. You rebuild because that's who you are. Someone who creates rather than destroys. And in the end, that's the real victory. I believe stories such as this find us for a reason. If this one touches you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day. In the meantime, there are 2 stories on the screen that are even better.